Hello, and welcome back to my Astro Imaging Journey channel. As you can see, rainy day. Definitely not going to be doing any imaging tonight. It's also the 4th of July. Not sure when this will get posted up, but happy 4th to everybody out here in the States. As far as the weather's concerned, then you'll probably hear some people out here shooting guns, fireworks, whatever. It is the 4th of July after all. Anyways, what I wanted to do in this episode is, it's been some time since I've done a Q&A, and what I wanted to do was just go through some backlog of some questions and comments that have come through the channel. First one comes from Mike Avanaso. You're probably old enough to remember Alice Cooper's song "Welcome to My Nightmare." They left a $1,000 camera on my porch, no signature. Yes, I am old enough to remember that song, and many of his others. Apologies for the dog, he's barking at something out here. Seems to be when you're ordering these things, signature required is something the shipper has to request, and if they didn't request it, clearly they're going to leave it without a signature. If there was a signature required and they left it without a signature, then definitely need to open up a complaint with the shipper, not the company you ordered it from, but the company that actually transported it to your door, be it FedEx, UPS, or what have you. Sorry about that. I hope your camera ended up being okay. As it turns out, the issues that I had didn't damage my optics, so I'm very, very lucky in that regards. Next question comes from Nelson Rivera on episode 5, the unboxing video. He writes, "Nice scope. Will you be using it for astrophoto or stargazing? Just curious. I'm planning on buying one that will work for both." I don't do too much stargazing, except for when the rig's running and I happen to be out here and I'm just looking up. I'm using it primarily for astrophotography. I have gone through on occasion and using the camera with extreme high ISO, 128,000 ISO in the frame and focus and backyard EOS to look at a few things like Jupiter, Saturn when I can. It's pretty low, blocked by the trees right now, at least Jupiter is, so I can't see it unless I cut down a couple of those trees. But I have done that through the camera. I haven't put an eyepiece on it because this is a dedicated astrophotography rig. If I wanted to do stargazing in general using eyepieces and my eyeball as the camera, then I would probably end up getting another telescope for that purpose. The next two, question and a comment, come on episode 7. My first session trying to capture M109, and I tagged it as a failure. The first one is from, I believe it's EP59. "Hi, I have an 11 HD telescope, CGEM enough to take that weight." I don't know about the CGEM. This rig is mounted on the CGEM 2. It's an updated version of the original CGEM. The CGEM 2 can handle 45 pounds of payload. And from what I've read and tested, that is the payload itself. So that's 45 pounds worth of optical gear and camera and all that good stuff, and then another up to 45 pounds in counterweights. So grand total of 90 pounds. That's probably pushing it, if that is true. My rig with nothing attached to it comes in at about 33 to 35 pounds, somewhere in there. So, and then on top of that, you have the counterweights. So I'm probably at that edge. You know, I don't want to put too much more on it. I do put the telephoto lens and camera on the top every once in a while, and it seems to do fine. And combined, those are, you know, another 6 pounds or so. So we're, you know, I'm right at that edge. I don't want to put anything else on there and burn out the mount. And then also on that video we have a comment from HAEL. Couple comments. The counterweights go on first, minimizing the chance of your rig tipping over. Your tripod is installed backwards. There should be a leg under the counterweights and 2 legs at the back. This prevents your rigs from tipping over towards the front. Okay, I addressed this one in the comments, but I figure I'd do that here as well. I appreciate his insight. I know that probably is true for some mounts. However, Celestron in their documentation has stated that the orientation of the tripod legs as well as your mount on the top really doesn't matter. There is an index pin that you can put on one side or the other, and so that you can flip your mount either so that your OTA is facing that one leg that's in the front, or in the opposite, you know, 180 degrees from that. Celestron says you can set it up however you feel it needs to, and it's not a problem. So I set it up how it was shipped from the manufacturer. They had the index pin in that position where the OTA in the stow position or the park position is over the 2 legs in the front. But thank you for that insight. Always check your documentation to make sure that you are installing and using your mount in accordance with what the manufacturer recommends. Next 2 questions here, I believe 3, are on episode 8 on the Polemaster unboxing, the QHY Polemaster. First one comes from 2Badger2. I wonder if you ever get accuracy if you... let me reread this here. I wonder if you get even more accuracy if you pick a star used for the 2 30-degree rotations furthest from the North Star that you can see on the screen. Good video. Okay. I haven't tested that, and maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm not sure. I generally have been picking the same star that was in that video every time I use it, so I haven't had any issues as far as accuracy. It would make sense, being if you can work with larger numbers and distances in the calculations, you can get more precise. So mathematically, it would make sense to me. However, it is software. It is going to calculate what it calculates and recommend your position accordingly. And there's always the drift alignment in, say, PhD2 or Sharp Cap or whatever, that you can then dial that in a little bit further if you so choose. I can't speak with any authority on whether or not you would get more accuracy. However, I believe you probably would. And thanks for the kind words there for a good video. Next one comes from P.A. Hawkins. He says, so spend the money on this over the free Sharp Cap polar alignment feature. What are the benefits? Okay, so Sharp Cap, yep, it's free. It's software. It's going to ask you to, I've never personally used it, but I have watched a couple tutorials on it, and it looks very, very good. It asks you to slew to a star, center it, does a calculation. You slew to another star, center it, does a calculation, figures out where you need to go. You make your adjustments, biggity bangity boom. In the end, you're doing the same thing. The Pole Master, yes, I spent the money on it simply because it is sitting on that center rotational axis for your RA. Okay, so for me, everything being equal, I like that ability. It's using a separate camera rather than a camera on my OTA. It's on the center rotation, and I don't have to do a bunch of slewing and add more rotations on, more use on the gears and the mount itself, as opposed to just letting the camera do its thing. The only time I do the rotation is when I'm doing those two 30-degree rotations, and then back to home and make my adjustments accordingly. So, that's dealer's choice. Spend the money, get the QHA Pole Master, save the money, use the free Sharp Cap. Either way, you're going to have to work it into your workflow and your process on how you're going to polar align. Like I've said before, do you, whatever works for you, keep at it. If it gets you the images you want to get, I'm not going to tell you any different. This works for me. I opted to go this. But I will say, when I purchased the Pole Master, I did not know about Sharp Cap, and that it was free. Had I known that, might have went that route. Not sure. Next question, same episode, comes from Laser Guy 2009. M81 came out great. What scope are you using, and what camera? Well, thanks for the kind words that you think it came out great. And as far as what scope I'm using, the Celestron Edge HD 11-inch. And the camera I'm using is a modified Canon T6i. I sent it away to Spencer's Photography, had the IR cut filter removed and an H alpha filter installed in its place. Still cuts some of that IR out, but it extends that red band into more of the H alpha and the deep reds. And then on top of that, I also have a light pollution filter, clip-in filter in front of that to help with some of the light pollution that is creeping into my area, unfortunately. So thanks for that question as well. Next few questions and comments come on episode 15, the setup and walkthrough. The first question comes from Dustin Fleming. Looking to start imaging on my Edge HD11. With the auto guide package you have, did the guide scope mount on the Edge HD tube with the packaging provided, or did you have to get a separate specific mount for the Orion 60? Thanks, very helpful to a new Edge owner. All right, congrats on it. I like it. It's a good scope, so congrats on your purchase. As far as the guide scope mount, I did have to purchase a I believe it was a dovetail attachment. I forget who I purchased it through. I want to say it was Amazon or High Point, one of the two, but I did have to purchase a little dovetail mount to put onto the optical tube, and then mount the guide scope on top of it. It came with the rings and the dovetail, and you had to buy this little adapter. So hope by now, that's looks like that was about three and a half months ago, so hopefully by now you've got it working there, Dustin, and it's working great for you. Next question comes from Tyson Blankenmeyer. What the hell is that howling animal in the background? Is that a Yeti? I threw that one in there for comic relief. Yeah, as you can see, I live in a wooded area. Neighbors are kind of sparsed out. Actually, it was the neighbors over in that direction that they've got a blue tick hound and a couple other dogs, and the howling you hear in the background of that particular video was them. And when they get going, then my dogs get going, and I've got a beagle and he's got a nice howl as well. So hey, but yeah, I'm glad somebody picked up on that. That was that's always fun around here, especially when the deer and bear are walking through. The dogs like to get a little animated. Next one comes from Free Speech. Too much work, too much money. Can I see Saturn close up? Then I can buy. I don't care crap about deep sky stuff, only planets. Also want to move telescope through Wi-Fi inside home, telescope in backyard. Don't want many bells and whistles. Okay, Free Speech, to each their own. You want to do planetary, the scope without the focal reducer, you're going to be able to see the planets. If you're looking to do eyepiece optical observing, plenty of options out there. Get the eyepieces, with the higher magnification, so that you can see them a little bit better. If you're thinking about doing photography, planetary photography, then it's all going to be dependent on your camera and what you can do with it, as far as any type of digital zoom or anything like that. When I tested initially trying to capture Jupiter, which I have not done, I'm hoping to do that sometime, but like I said, it's a little bit behind the trees there and I just can't see it. It was early on when I was first trying this thing out in the first couple weeks. I didn't have my focusing, I wasn't focusing correctly is what I'm trying to say, and it just looked like a unfocused star. So I didn't get to see Jupiter in its true glory, but with a 2x teleconvert, the thing's natively 2800 millimeters. That's going to reach out there and be able to see those, and then on top of that, if I put a 2x teleconverter on top of that, because I am using a DSLR, then, or a Barlow lens if you're using a different type of camera, that 2800 all of a sudden now becomes 5600 millimeters, and you're going to reach out there and touch those planets. So hopefully you'd be able to see them up close and personal. And as far as using Wi-Fi, it's not my cup of tea. Celestron mount does have an accessory. I believe it's called the Skylink module, and I've never personally used it. I don't own it, but from what I've read, it will broadcast a Wi-Fi signal that you can then connect your laptop or phone to, and either use your phone to control the mount or use the Celestron's new CPWI or Celestron Planewave instruments software and do that. And as you can see, Tina's home, so I'm going to go help her unload some groceries, and I'll be back with the next episode. Alright, I'm back. So the next comment came from Bruce Nunn, and that was just couldn't watch after 2 minutes. Yeah, those earlier videos, I'll agree. They weren't that great, and learned a lot about video editing and stuff since then. So hope you're still around, Bruce. Apologize. I went back, I watched it. It was pretty bad, you know. But thanks for at least watching 2 minutes, and hope you're watching again. Next one comes from episode 24. That's the plate solver. Finally got plate solver 2 working in SGP, and this is from Jim Calvin. I'd love to hear if you ever figure out why PhD or PlateSolve 2 isn't working on sequence runs when it runs just fine on a given image. I'm having the same exact issue, but on all star fields that it takes. Going to try to use my spare 4 hours of clear skies tonight to troubleshoot it. I'm thinking it's somewhere in the settings of PlateSolver 2 that I got mixed up. Thanks for the video. I hope you got it working by now. This was about two and a half months ago. I really hope you got it working by now, Jim. And I've got it working pretty consistently. The 2 things that I've seen in my setup is 1, exposure time, and 2, focusing. So the first thing that I do in my setup, or not the first thing is power up the rig, get it aligned, connect up to the PC, and load my software. The next thing I do after that is, once I'm connected up, I go to my first target. I slew over to my first target in SGP, and I do a take image in SGP and let it just get an exposure, about a 15-second exposure. Look at what my full width half max is, and adjust my focus using the motorized focuser, the Moonlight motorized focuser, and the controls in there to get it about as low as I can get, which is usually around 7-ish. And then I will do an autofocus routine, get that working, and then I can start the sequence. And usually, because I run, I believe it's 15-second exposures for the plate solving, there's 2 points in the sky, 2 targets that I have had issues with, where PlateSolver 2 just couldn't solve it, but astrometry.net, the blind solve, worked just fine. But every other target so far worked without issue. So, you know, try that. Increase your exposure a little bit, get some more of those stars to come through, brighten up the ones that are there, and make sure your focus is on point. Next one is for episode 28, SGP Focuser issues. First one comes from Lamar Vaz. Hello there, I have a question. I just ordered my Moonlight Focuser. I see one of your videos, you were talking about a star mask. Do you have a video how you use the star mask with settings in Sequence Generator Pro on the Moonlight Focuser? And there's a little back and forth. The star mask he was referring to was not a star mask like we think of in PixInsight, but rather the batten-off mask. So no, I don't have a video on the use of the batten-off mask. It sits in front of it. You've got your little diffraction spikes. You've got the one in the middle that'll move. You got the 2 that create an X that stay stationary, and then middle one will go left, right, and you want it to be as dead center as possible. So sorry, Lamar, I don't have a video on that, and but we did have a little back and forth in the comments. Hopefully we got everything pretty much dialed in. I gave him a little procedure on how I got the motorized focuser to work inside SGP, and then obviously I have a video on that previously, since then. So hopefully, at least for Lamar's sake, hopefully it helped him out, and hopefully you guys got some benefit out of those as well. The next one comes from episode 32, makeshift cover, which you can see I am still using. First one comes from Ray's Astrophotography. Hi Ray. If it is too windy, difficult to hold with those small pins, are you planning to leave it? Are you planning to leave when it is too hot and cold? Okay, so as you can see, still using it, and it's 90 degrees out this week, and I've left it out there. If we get too much hotter, I think 94, 95, I'll be pulling my rig inside. And then too cold, I think it was single digits was the point where it was a little bit too cold, and I was having some issues with the hand controller. But the mount itself, rock solid. The camera was also pretty good. So I think at least for the gear, hand controller will come inside if it gets into the single digits during the winter. Projected to get below, in the negatives, I might pull the whole rig inside. But as far as too hot, too cold, hasn't been an issue so far. As far as the cover and the wind, I still use the little pins. I haven't put tent pegs out there yet. But what I have done is, I don't know if you can see it, where's my finger? Right in this area here on the front side, you'll see concrete block. I put a couple of those around on the lanyards that connect to the pins, and that has helped keep it down on the ground as well. Haven't had any issues. The only other thing I did add was I took a 55-gallon trash bag and put it over my OTA to help keep some of that dust and stuff out of there, and then I put that on there. That also helps. That's another nice little tip. Helps with those lanyards. They flop around, they're nice and loose. They like to get caught on things like the guide scope and the star sense and all that good stuff. So putting that trash bag over there helps to keep those lanyards from getting caught up on those little things. Same video, Steve Bradley says, I'd be a little concerned about the fact that there's very little rigidity in those poles. They are meant to bend. That's why they fit in the box. Any way to attach guy lines higher on the walls to give it a little bit more stability. I explored a lot of not a real observatory options and went with a 6x6 shelter logic shed. It secures down very sturdy with ground augers, and it's rock solid. When I image, I unclip the two front legs and flip the whole shed back on its side, vice versa when shutting down for the night. I can unclip it from all the augers and move it out of the way when my scope is not set up or I need the space in my backyard. Awesome solution, Steve. Mine's sitting out there in the middle of the front yard. I take the OTA off the concrete, or I take the rig off the concrete, fold that thing up. Looks like a little concrete bird bath area, and it's a little more aesthetically pleasing as opposed to having some type of makeshift shed sitting in my front yard all the time. So, curb appeal, I didn't want to do something like that. There's the concrete pad sitting there, so I can always dress it up if we are having company or whatever, and we don't want it to look too gaudy, if that That's the right terminology. So yeah, glad you figured yours out, Steve. This is working for me. You know, like I've always said, do you, I'll do me. As long as what we're doing for ourselves is working, then keep at it, and everybody will be happy, right? Next one comes on episode 34, which was Q&A number 2. Chris Thompson says, great videos, love the channel. What guide scope do you use? Helical Focuser. Always found them hard to dial in. First, Chris, thanks for the comments, the kind words. The guide scope I'm using is an Orion 60mm guide scope, and it is a helical focuser, and then the Orion Starshoot camera. So that answers that question. Yes, it is a helical focuser. Like I said, they are hard to dial in, but everything I've read, especially with PhD2, the focus doesn't have to be exactly dialed in, and if you leave it just a hair out of focus, it helps thin out those edges a little bit, and allows PhD2 in particular better calculate the center of the star and actually give you better guiding if you're just a little bit out of focus. Not a lot, a little bit. So dial it in as best you can, and if it's not perfect, PhD2 says that's perfectly fine and is actually a little bit preferred. So, you know, it is what it is, and I haven't touched that thing in like 6 months, and it's been rock solid and been guiding great. Episode 38, OTA woes. Mike Avanasso again says, it looks like your Ethernet cable is pretty long. A couple of questions. Cat5 or Cat5e? Seems like corrupt data. Length? Question mark. Are you running it parallel with your power cord? When you bring your equipment in from the cold, does it go straight in the house or garage first? Like anything internal, condensation can wreak havoc on electronics. Looks like condensation may be the cause of watermarks on your scope too. Just points to ponder, clear skies. Thanks, Mike. All good points. So let me go one by one here. The Ethernet cable is pretty long. It's 150 feet. Okay. The USB converter I have will drive 168 feet worth of Ethernet cord. So I'm just inside that length. So there should not be any data corruption. And that allows me to run it along to the side of the house and inside to the basement where I have everything set up to do my imaging. So that's why I preferred that. I could have went maybe 100 foot cable and went just inside this wall here and done my imaging, but you know, again, if we have company over, I got to tear everything down. At least downstairs I can pretty much leave everything intact and not have any issues. It is a Cat6 cable actually, not a Cat5 or Cat5e. I happen to have some extra Cat6 that I had for other projects, and I decided to use that just because it is a higher quality cable. The corrupt data we already addressed. Length, are you running it parallel with the power cord? I don't know if you can see it. No, it's buried in the grass. So right here is my power cord. The Ethernet cable comes from over there. All the way down, let me get turned around here. You'll see right there on the, right there, on the concrete pad is where they come together. They do not cross, and once they get into the grass, I keep them at least 3 feet apart, all the way up to the house. For those of you that are into electronics will know. For those that don't, you do not want any type of data connection cable, in this case an Ethernet cable, running parallel to a power cable. The electricity coming through the power cable will create electronic electrical interference, magnetic interference on your data cable, and can corrupt your data. So, to that end, it's always recommended, at least for Ethernet, 3 feet between your Ethernet cord and any type of power cord, AC power cord, that is. So, the only place where they are actually close is right up there at the pad, and I have not had any issues because the length where they are within 3 feet of each other is relatively short. So, but thanks for the concern and thanks for pointing that out. Allow me to bring that up. And when I bring my equipment in, does it go straight in the house or the garage first? I don't have a garage, so it has to go straight into the house. But what I do is I take it to the basement, where we keep it warmer. When it's in the wintertime, it's darn cold. The basement area, we use a pellet stove, and it is very dry down there, so the condensation burns off real quick and it dries out real quick. So I usually keep it down there, and in the summertime, if I do have to bring it in, I also use the basement because we block most of the vents off. So the basement will stay cool, but not so cool that it'll create issues. But I do take it straight to my office, which is warmer because it does have my NAS and a couple other computers, and it generally runs hotter in the office than the rest of the house. So there's not that great temperature variance where condensation will build up. But thanks for pointing that out as well. And next question, episode 44, processing M81, comes from Chris Thompson. How big of a desktop do you use for PixInsight, RAM, SSD, quad core, etc.? I actually use a laptop. It's an HP Omen 15-inch. It has an i7, 4 cores, 8 threads, 32 gig worth of memory. I do have an SSD, but I don't recommend it. I do have a video previously about testing the speed of your devices, and you'll see in there I do have an SSD, a platter drive, some USB drives, and I answered that part of the question in that one, so I'm not going to rehash. But I do all my video editing on the SSD because of the speed, but the read-write, I don't want to do so much on that because of the amount of data we do collect on a nightly basis. I put that onto the platter drive, and then I store it up on my NAS or on a USB drive. But it is an i7, 4-core, 8 threads, 32 gigs of RAM, and a terabyte and a half worth of hard drive space. So I hope that helps you out, Chris. I know we had a little exchange in there. The laptop was a little expensive for him, so you can run it on you can run PixInsight on a $200-300 desktop just fine. It's just going to take you longer to process some stuff. If I dedicated a server with a Xeon Intel processor, running 64 threads and terabytes worth of memory, I'm sure some of my processing would not take 3 hours to do. But I don't have $5,000 to purchase one of those, so that money gets spent elsewhere, and we have a good old time. So next one, episode 51, the lengthy PixInsight workflow based on the light vortex astronomy, broken up into quite a few chapters. And thanks everybody for sticking with that one. I actually kind of enjoyed doing that one. First one comes from Colin Thomas. Hi, very interesting series of videos. Can we download your workflow Word documents from anywhere? Clear skies. Okay, I don't have the workflow in a document anymore. As you saw in there, when you do your settings in a process and you create your process icon, it saves those settings. So when you reload it, so what I have is my workflow is actually the process icons, and I have the settings within each process set to what generally gets me the closest result for the bulk of my images, and then from there I will, if I need to, I will tweak the settings within the process from what I have saved onto the workspace. So sorry I don't have it in a Word document. It's all in there. I used to have a Word document in my earlier videos, but now that I learned that you can actually save the settings by creating those process icons, I did away with the Word document. So sorry about that, Colin, but you know, hopefully you work something out that helps you out. Claudio R writes, waiting for a 180p version at 360, cannot read Windows. Okay, this was a issue that I did not know I did not know that you could upload and make it private or schedule it for a later date and time so that it could do all the processing. When some of these are 30-40 minutes long, it can take a couple hours for YouTube to fully process beyond 360p and get the 1080p or 4K resolutions available for people to view. I was uploading them, they were immediately public, and I got a couple of those comments. So thank Claudio for pointing that out again. Since then I have uploaded and made them private and waited until the 4K option was available before I make them public for you to view. So that was a learning experience. And lastly, I believe we have LNLARXG writes, great help, love your channel, as I just started out with PixInsight, clear skies. Hey, the Light Vortex Astronomy did all the legwork in creating the web page and the tutorials on there. All I did was take his, put it in video format with his permission, by the way, and so all the credit really goes to him for getting those done. But thank you for the kind words. I enjoy doing this, and it's good to see that people are getting benefit out of it. So really appreciate that and the kind words. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click that like button. Subscribe if you so choose. Ring that bell to get notified when I post something new. And as always, clear skies.
In the upper right, you'll find my latest video. In the lower right, you'll see what YouTube thinks you'll like. And below, you'll see the subscription link. Please check them out.